once again from rainy Brussels from SolarPower Summit 2017. And a couple of months ago, we spoke to Sonia Dunlop, who was working for STA in London, and suddenly arriving here, we see she's working for SolarPower Europe. So, hello, Sonia.
Hello, how are you?
Very good, thank you so much. So, Sonia, actually, what brought you here to Brussels?
So I've always been interested in cooperation at EU level in the previous, the current EU Renewables Directive, and I think I've often been interested in the interrelation between what's happening at national level in the market on the ground in the UK and the kind of broad direction at EU level. And so I decided to move back here for all sorts of reasons, but also because I'm really interested in all the legislation that is going to come through Brussels over the next year or so, that is going to really set the scene in a very big picture way for the renewables industry and for combating climate change in Europe across the next 10, 15 years. Now, of course, with the Brexit referendum, that now will have little or no impact on the solar PV market in the UK, but you know, a lot of EU legislation is currently integrated in British market design legislation, and so that will continue to have an impact. And I think that the UK will be quite clever in how it does things, and it may well look at the winter package, at the Clean Energy for All Europeans package that the Commission has just proposed, and might say, these bits seem like good ideas, let's try and do that ourselves.
Yeah, but still, UK is staying in Europe, yeah?
Yes, for now, yes, the UK is part of the EU, and of course the UK will always be part of Europe, the continent, and there will be a lot of cross-border trade and interconnection through the interconnections, and a lot of cooperation in terms of network codes, obviously.
Okay, so what is your role actually at SolarPower Europe?
So I am a policy advisor. I'm a policy advisor here at SolarPower Europe. I work on a number of different areas, primarily on digitalization, which is a really interesting area. It's all about how the digitalization of the electricity system, everything from smart grids, smart homes, smart meters, but also aggregators and all that, it is an opportunity for solar PV to deploy more solar, to sell more power, solar PV, but also to integrate that PV better into the electricity grid in a smarter way, and also take up new opportunities for revenue streams from solar that currently don't exist. So in many ways, solar, and specifically inverters, can provide services to the grid that currently are not remunerated. And if we just make a few simple changes, that could unlock a whole new revenue stream for solar PV, for digitalized solar PV.
Yes, I think it's especially interested in Europe, yes?
Sorry, say that?
I think it's especially interesting in Europe, yes?
Absolutely, yeah. So there's so much work going on. I think what's really interesting as well is looking at the Internet of Things, how that is going to play in to make demand response more possible, which then again allows you to integrate more solar PV into the system. And also, I think what's really interesting is the advent of new blockchain technology. Now, this is new. A lot of people are just discovering blockchain. No one's really sure exactly what impact it's going to have, but I think it could potentially change the way the entire electricity system, the entire electricity trading system, right? It could allow one solar prosumer to sell and buy electricity to and from his neighbor. And that kind of peer-to-peer electricity trading is something that we at SolarPower Europe are really interested in, and is one of the things we really want to look at more as part of our work on digitalization over the next year and a half.
And your other task is also, let's say, to coordinate activities of the financing task force, yes?
Yes, that's right. So we are working on a research project called PV Financing, which is looking at business models, at financing schemes, and really trying to ask what are the business models that will allow solar to deploy in Europe in a, generally speaking, relatively low subsidy environment, not zero subsidy, but low subsidy. And what are the business models that will allow us to maximize the value of solar electricity, So that really means, trying to compete more in the retail space rather than in the wholesale market, while making sure that we have enough of choice of off-takers so that we're not exposed to high off-taker risks. And so there's a lot of interesting work happening, I think, in two main areas. One is solar on multi-occupancy buildings, so apartment blocks, office buildings that have many different businesses. And there's new business models emerging in Germany, Austria, France, to make solar work on those kind of buildings. And I think the other thing that's really interesting is off-site corporate power purchase agreements. So a ground mount solar farm selling its power to a business on the other side of the country, or maybe even on the other side of Europe, through these very innovative corporate PPA models. And that's something that we at SolarPower Europe are going to be looking at more as part of our corporate sourcing working group, which is just starting tomorrow here at the SolarPower Summit, and we hope to develop over the next few years.
So what will be the next steps within the project?
Within the PV financing project, well, the next step is that we are going to hold a big event in the European Parliament to look at the research we've done over the last 2 years or so and say, okay, based on this, here are the policy changes we recommend in the Clean Energy for All package, the winter package of legislation, to allow these business models to be implemented, because in many cases these business models work in one country, but because of regulation don't work in another. And we are on the same day going to publish a new report, a PV financing policy advisory paper at EU level, going into detail, saying just 10 changes that we need to make, mostly at EU level, that will allow new solar business models to come forward and to reduce the cost of financing and reduce the cost of capital for PV in Europe.
So I imagine that all this work is, of course, involving the members, yes? So it's not only Secretariat which is working, yeah?
Oh yes, absolutely. So we have about 25-30 members who are very much involved in the digitalization task force. On the financing side, I've consulted with a lot of different members who have expertise in this area, included a lot of their ideas into the report, and working closely with a number of national associations across Europe, such as the UK Solar Trade Association in the UK, Ambiente Italia in Italy, BSW in Germany, and a few other more consultants and research institutes such as CREARA in Madrid and Gunder in Turkey. So yeah, working with organizations across Europe to see what are the best practices and how can we spread them further.
So what will be the next steps?
The next step, so yeah, as I say, for the PV financing project, the next step is a report that's going to be published in May, the event, and then we hope to continue that work further with our members to continue update this as new sort of setups, as new innovative financing schemes come forward.
Okay, so if any company would like to be a part, they should become members, of course, of SolarPower Europe.
Yeah.
So in London, you were saying some bullet points, why companies should become members of STA. And from UK perspective now, also working for the European Association, why the global companies should join SolarPower Europe?
I think as part of SolarPower Europe, you get all sorts of things. I think above all, we help make business happen across Europe. So I think being a member of SolarPower Europe, it's about being at the cutting edge of what's happening in the European solar industry, and building those relationships with the key people in these at European level in these leading companies. And also being part of things like the report that we're hoping to publish at the end of this year or early next year on what are the market opportunities for digitalized solar. So being part of that. I also think being part of SolarPower Europe is also about influencing our work on regulation and policy. a lot of when you're working on the ground in the UK, Italy, Spain, wherever, you're not totally aware of how much EU level policy is actually impacting the way you can sell your power and the business you're doing on a day-to-day level. But actually it really is. A lot of the decisions, for example, on priority dispatch, priority access for renewable electricity onto the grid, are made here in Brussels. And we need to make sure that we have the right framework from 2020 onwards to be able to continue deploying renewables and making sure those projects are bankable, and that we can really sell our electricity onto the market in the right way. So I think it's about realizing how much of the regulatory framework is actually made here in Brussels and investing in that, even if 2020, 2021 is a long way off. I know it is. I know when you're trying to do business and you're worried about the second half of 2017, you might say, oh, leave the future to someone else. But really, if you want a long-term sustainable industry, you have to invest in the work that's going to guarantee the policy framework in those years to come.
And last but not least, you can be member of this large family behind, which is disturbing our interview. But actually, this is the most important part of the organization, the members. So that was Solar PV TV together with Sonia Dunlop, who is policy advisor at SolarPower Europe. Thanks for watching.